The Ballad of the White Horse by G.K. Chesterton, Book 6, Book the 6th. Ethandune, the Slaying of the Chiefs. As the sea flooding the flat sands flew on the sea-born horde, the two hosts shocked with dust and din left at the Latian paladin, clanged dull prince heralds howling cannon Colin and the sword. Crashed in the midst on Marcus Ogier with Guthrum by, and eastward of such central stir, far to the right and faint leer, the house of Elf, the harp player, struck Eldred's with a cry. The central swat for weariness, stemming the screaming horde, and wearily went Colin's hands that swung King Alfred's sword. But like a cloud of morning to eastward easily, tall Eldred broke the sea of spears as a tall ship breaks the sea. His face like a sanguine sunset, his shoulder a Wessex down, his hand like a windy hammer stroke, men could not count the crests he broke, so fast the crest went down. As the tall white devil of the plague moves out of Asian skies, with his foot on a waste of cities and his head in a cloud of flies. Or purple and peacock skies grow dark with a moving locust tower, or tawny sand winds tall and dry like hell's red banners beat and fly when death comes out of Araby, was Eldred in his hour. But while he moved like a massacre, he murmured as in sleep, and his words were all of low hedges and little fields and sheep. Even as he strode like a pestilence that strides from Rhine to Rome, he thought how tall his beans might be if ever he went home. Spoke some stiff piece of childish prayer, dull as the distant chimes, that thanked our good for good eating, and corn and quiet times, till on the helm of a high chief fell shatteringly his brand, and the helm broke and the bone broke and the sword broke in his hand. Then from the yelling Northmen, driven splintering on him, ran full 7 spears, and the 7th was never made by man. 7 spears, and the 7th was wrought as the fairy blades, and given to Elf the minstrel by the monstrous water maids. By them that dwell where luridly lost waters of the Rhine move among roots of nations, being sunken for a sign. Under all graves they murmur and rebel. Down to the buried kingdoms creep, and like a lost rain roar and weep over the red heavens of hell. Thrice drowned was Elf the minstrel, and washed as dead on sand, and the 3rd time men found him, the spear was in his hand. 7 spears went about Eldred like stays about a mast, but there was sorrow by the sea for the driving of the last. 6 spears thrust upon Eldred were splintered while he laughed, 1 spear thrust into Eldred, 3 feet of blade and shaft. And from the great heart grievously came forth the shaft and blade, and he stood with the face of a dead man, stood a little and swayed, and fell, as falls a battle tower, on smashed and struggling spears, cast down from some unconquered town that rushing earthward carries down loads of live men of all renown, archers and engineers. And a great clamor of Christian men went up in agony, crying, "Fallen is the tower of Wessex that stood beside the sea." Center and right the Wessex guard grew pale for doubt and fear, and the flank failed at the advance, for the death light on the wizard lance, the star of the evil spear. "Stand like an oak," cried Marcus, "stand like a Roman wall. Eldred the good is fallen. Are you too good to fall? When we were wan and bloodless, he gave you ale anew. The pirates deal with him as dung. God, are you bloodless now? Grip, Wolf and Gorlius, grip the ash, slaves, and I make you free. Stamp Hildred hard in English land. Stand Gurth, stand glorious, Gawain stand. Hold Halfgar with the other hand, Halmer hold up on knee. The lamps are dying in your homes, the fruit upon your bough. Even now your old thatch smolders, Gurth. Now is the judgment of the earth. Now is the death Gurth. Now!" For thunder of the captain, not less the Wessex line, leaned back and reeled a space to rear, as Elf charged with the Rhine-made spear amid roaring like the Rhine. For the men were borne by the waving walls of woods and clouds that pass, by dizzy plains and drifting sea, and they mixed God with glamoury, God with the gods of the burning tree and the wizard's tower and glass. But Mark was come of the glittering towns where hot white details show, where men can number and expound, and his faith grew in a hard ground of doubt and reason as falsehood found, where no faith else could grow. Belief that grew of all beliefs, one moment back was blown, and belief that stood on unbelief stood up iron and alone. The Wessex crescent backwards crushed, as with bloody spear went Elf roaring and routing, and Mark against Elf yet shouting, shocked in his mid-career. Right on the Roman shield and sword did spear of the Rhine maids run, but the shields shifted never, the sword rang down to sever, the great Rhine sang forever, and the songs of Elf were done. And a great thunder of Christian men went up against the sky, saying, "God hath broke the evil spear ere the good man's blood was dry." Spears at the charge, yelled Mark amain. Death on the gods of death, or over the thrones of doom and blood goeth God that is a craftsman good, and gold and iron, earth and wood, loveth and laboureth. The fruits leap up in all your farms, the lamps in each abode. God of all good things done on earth, all wheels or webs of any worth, the God that makes the roof girth, the God that makes the road. The God that heweth kings in oak writeth songs on vellum, God of gold and flaming glass, confregiet potentias, arcuum scutum gorlias, gladium et bellum. Steel lightning broke about him, battle bays and palm, all the sea kings swayed among woods of the Wessex arms upflung, the trumpet of the Roman tongue, the thunder of the psalm. And midmost of that rolling field ran Ogier ragingly, lashing at Mark, who turned his blow and brake the helm about his brow and broke him to the knee. Then Ogier heaved over his head his huge round shield of proof, but Mark set one foot on the shield, one on some sundered rock upheeled, and towered above the tossing field, a statue on a roof. Dealing far blows about the fight like thunderbolts aroam, like birds about the battlefield, while Ogier writhed under his shield like a tortoise in his dome. But hate in the buried Ogier was strong as pain in hell. With bare brute hand from the inside he burst the shield of brass and hide, and a death stroke to the Roman side went sent suddenly and well. Then the great statue on the shield looked his last look around, with level and imperial eye, and Mark, the man from Italy, fell in the sea of agony and died without a sound. And Ogier, leaping up alive, hurled his huge shield away, flying, as when a juggler flings a whizzing plate in play, and held up 2 arms up rigidly, and roared to all the Danes, "Fallen is Rome, yea, fallen the city of the plains. Shall no man born remember that breaketh wood or wield? How long she stood on the roof of the world as he stood on my shield. The new wild world forgetteth her as foam fades on the sea. How long she stood with her foot on man as he with his foot on me. No more shall the brown men of the south move like the ants in lines to quiet men with olives or mad men with vines. No more shall the white towns of the south where Tiber and Nilus run, sitting around a secret sea, worship a secret sun. The blind gods roar for Rome fallen and forum and garland gone, for the ice of the north is broken and the sea of the north comes on. The blind gods roar and rave and dream of all cities under the sea, for the heart of the north is broken and the blood of the north is free. Down from the dome of the world we come, rivers on rivers down, under a swirl the Saxon hordes and the high dooms we drown. Down from the dome of the world and down, struck flying as a skiff on a river, and spate is spun and swirled until we come to the end of the world that breaks short, like a cliff. And when we come to the end of the world, for me, I count it fit to take the leap, like a good river, shot shrieking over it. But what so hap at the end of the world where nothing is struck and sounds? It is not by Thor, these monkish men, these humbled Wessex hounds, not this pale line of Christian hinds. This one white string of men shall keep us back from the end of the world and the things that happen then. It is not Alfred's dwarfish sword nor Egbert's pygmy crown shall stay us now that descend in thunder, rending the realms and the realms thereunder, down through the world and down. There was that in the wild men back of him, there was that in his own wild song, a dizzy throbbing, a drunkard smoke, that dazed to death all Wessex folk and swept their spears along. Vainly the sword of Cullen and the axe of Alfred plied, the Danes poured in like a brainless plague and knew not when they died. Prince Cullen slew a score of them and was stricken to the knee. King Alfred slew 67 and was borne back on a tree. Back to the black gate of the woods, back up the single way, back by the place of the parting ways Christ's knights were whirled away. And when they came to the parting ways, doom's heaviest hammer fell, for the king was beaten, blind, at bay, down the right lane with his array, but Cullen swept the other way, where he smote great strokes and fell. The thornwoods over Ethandune stand sharp and thick as spears. By night in firs and forest harms, far sundered were the friends in arms. The loud lost blows, the last alarms, came not to Alfred's ears. The thornwoods over Ethandune stand stiff as spikes in mail. As to the hawk king came at morn, dead Roland on a doubtful horn, seemed unto Alfred lightly borne, the last cry of the gale. And there we shall end it for today.